A story of a judge in particular, Gideon, caught our attention, especially in the part where he starts out with an army of several thousand soldiers with which to confront the Midianites. Through a series of tests, God has Gideon pare down the numbers of soldiers until there's a mere 300 left, at which point God informs Gideon that is now all set and ready to go for battle. Let's go into the Gideon story now. Israel lived in peace for about 40 years. The Israelites could not stop sinning. They began to worship other gods again. So the Lord let the nation of Midian rule the Israel for 7 long years. According to the book of Genesis, the Midianites were the descendants of Midian, who was a son of Abraham and his wife Keturah. The Midianites were stronger than Israel. The Midianites were cruel to them. Whenever the Israelites planted crops, the Midianites came and camped in their fields. Then they would let their cows and sheep graze there until every last piece of grain was eaten. The Midianites stole whatever they could from the people of Israel. It was so bad that some Israelites ran away into the mountain and hid in caves. They cried out to God, "Help us!" So God sent a prophet to tell his people, "I am your God. You were slaves in Egypt, but I rescued you. When your enemies were against you, I helped you get rid of them. But even after this, you still disobeyed me." At this time, the Lord sent an angel to the town of Ophrah. The angel sat down under a big oak tree. A young man named Gideon was nearby harvesting wheat. The angel walked up to Gideon and said, "The Lord is with you. You are a strong warrior." Gideon replied, "Then why are these awful things happening to us? We hear the stories of how God rescued our ancestors in Egypt. But I think he must have forgotten about us. He hasn't done anything to save us from the Midianites." This time the Lord spoke, "Don't worry anymore. I'm choosing you to save Israel." "Why choose me?" Gideon asked. "My clan is the weakest among my tribe, and I'm no one special." The Lord answered, "You can rescue Israel because I am going to help you. You will beat the Midianites just as easy as if they were one man. Let me see if you are really the Lord." Gideon said, "Wait here and I'll prepare an offering." So Gideon killed a young goat and boiled the meat. He placed the meat under a tree with some bread. Then Gideon watched as the angel touched the offering with the tip of his walking stick. The offering got on fire, and the smoke rose up to the sky. Gideon was afraid, but the Lord said, "There's nothing to be afraid of." So Gideon set up an altar to God, and he called the altar, "The Lord calms our fear." That night the Lord spoke to Gideon, "Take your father's bull and use it to pull down the altar where the people worship Baal. Then build a new altar in honor of me." Gideon found 10 servants to help him, but he was afraid that someone would see them. He had to work at night while everyone was asleep. The next morning, the people found that the altar of Baal had been torn down. They saw a new one dedicated to God. They got angry and yelled, "Who did this?" "Gideon did it," someone said. The people went to Gideon's house, and his father Joash answered the door. "Bring out your son," they yelled. "He has ruined Baal's altar. He must die." Joash did not try to hide from the angry mob. He wasn't afraid of them. "Are you trying to save Baal?" he asked them. "If Baal is really a god, he can take care of himself. Let him take his own revenge on my son." Midianites and many other nations were planning to attack Israel. They crossed the Jordan River and camped in the Jezreel Valley. At the moment, Gideon was filled with the Lord's Spirit. He blew the trumpet and sent out messengers out to bring out the Israelites tribe together. They formed an army and prepared to fight. Gideon was nervous. He prayed, "Lord, I need a sign that you will rescue us. I will put some wool on the stone floor. If you are with us, make the wool wet with dew and leave the floor dry." Gideon got up next morning. He checked the wool. It was heavy and damp, and he squeezed the water out into a bowl. But the floor was dry. But Gideon wasn't convinced. He prayed again, "Lord, show me one more time that you are with us. This time, let the wool stay dry while the floor is wet." That night, the Lord did just as Gideon asked. When Gideon saw this, he gave a prayer of thanks. The Lord has calmed his fear again. The next morning, Gideon and his army traveled to a place called Fierce Spring. They camped there for the night. The Lord told Gideon, "Your army is too big. You don't need this many soldiers. I will help you win. Let everyone who's afraid go home." So thousands of men got up and turned around to go home. But there were still 10,000 men left. The Lord told Gideon, "You need a smaller army. Take the men down to the spring and I will test them. Some of them will go with you and some will go home." So Gideon led his army down to the spring. The Lord said to Gideon, "Watch how the men get a drink of water. Divide the men into 2 groups, those who lap up the water like a dog and those who kneel to drink." 300 men lap up the water and the rest kneel. The Lord said, "Take all the men who lap up the water like a dog. The rest can go home." Gideon was left with an army of 300 men. That night, the Lord came to Gideon and said, "Get up, it's time to fight. If you are still afraid, then sneak into the enemy camp. Listen to what your enemies are saying, and you won't be scared anymore." Gideon was afraid, so he and his servant Purah quietly snuck down into the enemy camp. Thousands of enemy soldiers were swarming around the place like locusts. Gideon heard what some of them were saying. One man said, "I dreamed that a loaf of berry bread went tumbling through our camp and knocked over the main tent. The tent flipped over and fell down." The other soldiers said, "Your dream must have been about Gideon, the Israeli commander. It means God will let him defeat our army." When Gideon heard this, he was not afraid anymore. He went back to his Israeli camp and said, "Let's go! The Lord is going to let us win!" Gideon handed out a trumpet to each of his soldiers. Then he handed out a clay jar with a torch inside. He told them, "Carry your trumpets, and when you hear my signal, blow them as loud as you can. Then smash the clay jars and hold your torches up high. Now let's go fight for the Lord." Gideon and his army marched toward the enemy camp. Then Gideon blew his trumpet signal. All the soldiers picked up their trumpet and blew as loud as they could. Then they shouted, "Fight with your swords for the Lord and for Gideon." They smashed their clay jars and held up their burning torches. The Midianites heard the mighty sound and covered their ears. The glow of the torches lit up their frightened faces. They began to tremble and shake. They picked up their sword, but the Lord made them confused. They began to fight their own people. Some of them tried to run away and cross the Jordan River, but Gideon already had every spring, stream, and river guarded. Not one single enemy could escape. When the battle was over and Israel had won, the people cheered. They flocked around Gideon and praised him. "You saved us," they told him. "Be our king, and after you are gone, your son can rule, and his son after that." But Gideon said, "I won't be your king, and my son won't be your king either. Only the Lord is your king." What I take from the story of Gideon is that God cares far more about quality than he does about quantity. His plans and purposes will come to pass in due time, and he is ready to accomplish it with 1,000, a dozen, or even with just a single person.